Good evening, everyone. I want to thank folks who are here in council chambers for joining us this evening, for the folks who are online for joining us for this important hearing. I am Councilmember Lourdes Barroso de Padilla. I'm the chair of Public Service and Transportation Committee. I want to first thank our CCTV staff. I want to thank my staff, Amaris Lemus and Jessica Cáceres, for helping to put together, and then members of our Columbus Public Safety, our public service team that are here that you'll hear from in just a moment. I want to talk a little bit about why we are here today, and also I want to share personally why this is something that I'm very passionate about as well. We're here to talk about the reduction of speed limits within downtown, and our public service team is going to talk about this in just a little bit, but we have a unique opportunity to change the speed limit of our roads downtown. So the Ohio Revised Code allows us, and I'm paraphrasing, you all can go into more detail, you can test me also and let me know if I did a good job, but the Ohio Revised Code essentially allows us, because the downtown area is a business district, to have jurisdiction over the speed limits and lowering the speed limits of downtown. And so I know that I've seen both online and even some inquiries into our office about why are we doing this now? Why are we reducing speed limits? And why would we do it downtown? And I want to put into perspective for folks who are watching that this effort that we have and this opportunity that we have to reduce speed, especially in the downtown area, is addressing both issues that we see now happening in downtown, but also it's about building for the future of Columbus. I often hear people say things about how many cyclists we may have or how many pedestrians we may have. First, if we have one, it's about saving that one person, right? We know we have many more than one. Secondly, it's about having the perspective of, at one point, our roads were built for buggies because that was a mode of transportation. Then we evolved to cars. And now we understand in a growing city where we are going to double our population in the next 20 years, we need to think about how to safely and equitably move people around the city of Columbus. And that means we need to move beyond, and environmentally, we need to move beyond a car and being car-centric to how are we people-centric. And being people-centric means that we are thinking about people moving on 2 feet, 2 wheels, 4 or more. And that's about having the foresight to see a vision for where we want to go as a city, not just where we are as a city. It's about being smarter than the folks before us, about thinking about how we make sure that we are really investing in the safety of our people. As a much younger person, why was I saying that with that emphasis as a younger person? My first job was in downtown Columbus, and one day after work, I walked 4 or 5 blocks to a parking lot where I parked every day, and in a crosswalk with the right-of-way, I was hit by a vehicle. And it was scary, and I had injuries that at the time we thought might be life-threatening, and even many years later, I'm still dealing with the same injuries that I suffered at 20-some years old. And so for me, when I think about this, I think about my mother, who is still to this day at 83 years old, an avid CODA rider, who walks many places, and I think about her safety. I think about my children. I think about the children at CCS who often take multiple buses. I think about the people who walk their dogs. Every single person, the consideration is for our people. So that's what the discussion is today. This is part of a larger plan that we have as a city called Vision Zero. If folks have not heard about the plan, you're going to hear a lot about it today. And you'll continue to hear about this strategy because this is, again, a national movement to end all traffic crashes and fatalities and injuries in our city streets. I want to share just a couple data points for perspective. So, according to AAA Foundation for Safety, for Traffic Safety, when people ask, what is a reduction of just 10 miles and what could it do? At 25-mile speed limit, 9 out of 10 people, 9 out of 10 average pedestrians will survive. 8 out of 10, if you are 70 years old and older, will survive. At 35 miles, 7 out of 10 average pedestrians survive. 5 out of 10 70-year-olds. At 45 miles per hour, 4 out of 10 average pedestrians will survive. 2 out of 10 70-year-olds will survive. And I want to be clear about this as I talk a little bit more about Vision Zero. There are tools that we will implement as a city, and you've begun to see those, and you're going to hear more about them. Those tools are only as good as the people who use them. So this is not just about what are we doing, it's about what we collectively are doing as a community. Because every time that we get behind a vehicle, we have a responsibility to ourselves and to the people around us to be safe, to put our phones down, to use the tools of the road, to follow the speed limit, to follow traffic signals, to watch for crosswalks, and to watch for people and cyclists in those crosswalks. So through Vision Zero, the city is fundamentally changing how we think about our transportation system. The Department of Public Service is leading the Vision Zero Columbus Action Plan to implement safety strategies through data-driven approaches to engineering, education, evaluation, and community engagement. Equity and factors that impact mobility options for residents in all of our neighborhoods are essential considerations to Vision Zero's efforts to enhance roadway safety in our community. Many residents don't have access to a vehicle, and traveling by walking or using a bicycle or by CODA, or link us very soon, is how folks will move around. So I want to go ahead and turn over the floor to our team from Public Service. I'm going to introduce both of you because I believe you're going to tag team this presentation. And then after your presentation, we'll ask some questions. And then we have a number of folks who are both here in council chambers. I also want to express we had 62 pieces of written testimony from folks in the community that were in favor of this change. So I want to go ahead and hand it over to Maria Cantrell, the city Vision Zero coordinator, and to Renato Stargel, the traffic management division administrator for public service. Take it away.
Thank you so much, Councilmember. We all really appreciate your commitment and passion and understanding of Vision Zero and what we're trying to accomplish. So I really appreciate, and our department really appreciates all that you've done. I do want to talk today a little bit about Vision Zero and what we're all about. For those of you that don't already know, Vision Zero is a national movement to end the fatal and serious injury crashes. And this prioritizes safety as our #1 focus. We know that people make mistakes, and we need to change our transportation system to be forgiving when people do make those mistakes. So here's a reminder of why we're here. These numbers represent people. It's not just data, these are loved ones. These are parents, children, cousins, best friends, colleagues, people that we care about. And you can see that the amount of people who have been killed on our streets in Columbus has basically doubled in a really short amount of time. And so that's why we're here. We need to make changes to the way our transportation system works. One of our biggest factors is speed, not just speeding, but speed is one of the leading factors that contributes to both the likelihood of a crash occurring and the severity of that crash. Councilmember just talked about a very similar statistic that shows, how much of an impact speed has on people who are not inside a vehicle, our vulnerable road users. Those are both pedestrians, bicyclists, again, could be people who are walking to use transit or the bus. And that's why this speed limit change is so important. Just that small difference in speed has such a great impact on the outcome and the severity of that crash. we know, I think I went too far, that the outcome of speed is a comprehensive approach. We factor in roadway design, the speed limit, enforcement, education, and culture. In public service, with Vision Zero, we're definitely changing roadway designs in a lot of places. We've just started with our action plan. We're at the beginning. It took us decades to get to this car-centric society, and so it's going to take a minute to make significant changes. But we're moving forward with changes on our roadway design. Particularly, you would have recently seen changes to Livingston Avenue from College Avenue over to James Road, where we've reduced speeds by changing the through lanes from 4 lanes down to 3 lanes and adding higher visibility crosswalks and median islands, all of which have really resulted in people driving safe speeds there. Also on Sullivan Avenue, we changed that corridor by changing the way the 14 different intersections function and look by having extended the sidewalks and curbs at those intersections to sort of constrict the space where the cars are driving. It naturally encourages them to slow down, and it also makes that distance for pedestrians to cross shorter. So, again, we're looking at how we change our street design both to accommodate our vulnerable road users and to encourage safe speeds and safe outcomes. In Columbus, in our downtown area, the data shows that from 2017 to 2021, there were 8 fatal crashes, 65 serious injury crashes, and another 281 vulnerable road user crashes. Again, vulnerable road users being bicyclists, pedestrians, and also motorcyclists, people who don't have the protection of a frame of a car or truck around them. So that's quite a big number in that short amount of time. And that's another reason why we're looking at that downtown area for this speed limit change. And I'm going to turn it over to Ronaldo now.
Thank you, Maria. So as far as the 25-mile-an-hour downtown speed limit reduction, the area highlighted in blue on the map is where we are looking to implement the change. So the area in blue, as Councilmember mentioned earlier, that's considered our downtown business district. So it's really trying to target and place the speed limit where we have the highest number of pedestrians in our downtown area. And so there's the greatest number of conflicts with vehicles and also for bicyclists and other users as well. And so this is a change that, if passed, we would begin the process of moving forward and erecting speed limit signage, throughout the month of March to get everything in place up and running. And another change that we're making with that is to retime our signal grid. So there are 134 signalized intersections that we will be updating and changing the timing for as part of this effort. A lot of times in our corridors, we change the traffic signals to mimic and match the speed limit of what someone should be driving through the corridor. So in order to get the full effectiveness of this change and see the benefits, we felt that it was very important to update the signal timing. Again, not just within the downtown area itself, but even on the outskirts of downtown as you lead into to make sure that everything is working as a coordinated grid. We're also, as part of this effort, going to implement what's referenced as a leading pedestrian interval. A leading pedestrian interval is basically a mechanism to provide a head start to a pedestrian when they're crossing across a crosswalk that has a high volume of turning traffic that may conflict with the roadway user. Normally that head start ranges anywhere from 3 to 7 seconds, depending on many factors, the size of the crosswalk, other factors, how much traffic is moving, trying to give that head start so that the pedestrian is well out into the crosswalk by the time a motorist would go to make their turn. So that makes them more visible, it gets them further across the street, and further minimizes the chance for a crash. So one example of this treatment we currently have in place is at the intersection of High and Whittier. So as you can see in the image, the walk signal is highlighted, but the pedestrian is already pretty close to halfway through the crosswalk. In the upper right corner of the screen, the signal is red for traffic that's looking to make a left turn from Whittier. So to further illustrate this, we have a video prepared.
Leading pedestrian interval at Whittier and High. The signal is changing.
So at this point, the pedestrian signal is lit.
Says to walk, but the cars still have a red light. Now they have a green light.
Now the vehicles
Are
get the
permitted.
green signal, and now they can make their left turn. But by this point, the pedestrian has safely made his way across the street, again, further minimizing the chance for a vehicle pedestrian crash. One place in the downtown area where we've already implemented this treatment is at the intersection of Mound and High. So here's another video, again, to illustrate that concept.
We are observing the leading pedestrian integral at Mound and High. You can see the advanced walk signal here for the pedestrian while the traffic light's still red and it just turned green.
So again, in this case, this particular crosswalk has a very high volume of pedestrians near the Franklin County Courthouse. And so that's one intersection, working with Franklin County, that we've implemented multiple safety improvements. And this is one that we've been able to figure out a way to implement ahead of the full retiming. So it'll be incorporated in the full retiming. We are planning to start by doing this at 7 signalized intersections. We're targeting the intersections that we're seeing have the highest numbers of incidences of pedestrian vehicle hits. And it's something that we're going to continue to monitor and expand at more intersections throughout the implementation. And with that, I will hand it back to the council member. Thank you.
Thank you for that presentation. I do have a couple questions. So we talked a little bit about the uniqueness of the area of downtown that we have this opportunity. I'm going to ask the million-dollar question that I know a lot of people are going to ask as soon as we talk about changing speed limits. Can you share with the public what is the process for changing speed limits, and is there other opportunities for us to do this in other parts of the city?
Good question. So as far as Ohio Revised Code, it requires that local jurisdictions work with the Ohio Department of Transportation when it comes to adjusting speed limits. There's various definitions in code. In this particular case, it is the business district definition that we are meeting, and that's what we're using here. But there's a lot of other tools in the toolbox for other areas in the city. We do intend, as part of our second action plan, to look at other opportunities to not only use this mechanism, but other mechanisms throughout Columbus. One of the action items from our first action plan, our partners at ODOT, Ohio Department of Transportation, they updated their speed study process to allow more consideration for situations where there are vulnerable road users, where there are bicyclists, where there are pedestrians. So we intend to look at other routes throughout the city to see where we can get some of these speeds lowered and pair them with some design changes.
Great, thank you. And then a follow-up question just around, it seems as if some of the strategies like the LPI look and the other timing we could do in other parts of the city. Is that also part of our strategy longer term for us to do that in other places, even if we can't, in line with some of the other strategies that we already have in place?
Yes, absolutely. We intend to start doing more LPIs throughout the city. One part of this retiming effort is through the analysis. We've been able to glean a lot of information from how other cities have implemented this. We've talked to sister agencies in other cities throughout the country on, how they've implemented, lessons learned, where has it worked, where has it not worked. And we do intend to do more of those types of treatments moving forward, as well as piloting, other potential things that may come up that are, aimed at reducing crash frequency.
Great. I have another question, so I might be putting you on the spot, Maria. I think this is probably more for you, but I want to reiterate the 5 kind of strategies behind, and maybe I'm not using, I saw it as strategies, but it's roadway design, right, around Vision Zero, roadway design, speed limit, enforcement, education, and culture, right? And I appreciate, I think if folks were listening, part of that culture change is also language, so not saying accidents, but saying crashes, vulnerable users, roadway users, so cyclists, pedestrians. So I want to zero in on a portion of this, which I know that this is something else we've gotten some questions around, is the enforcement piece. So can y'all talk a little bit about enforcement and how we are working with our partners to encourage enforcement around some of these strategies?
We certainly have the police department as part of our executive board of directors for Vision Zero, and we're talking with them about potential strategies that they may take ownership of as it relates to the enforcement piece. So we're still working through that, but we would encourage paying attention to that high injury network. We have a list of streets where 65% of our crashes occur on about 10% of our roads in Columbus. So it's a great place to start to focus our efforts.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And then the one other I just want to highlight, because I know that we've done some good work around the education piece, especially as it pertains to young people. So I just wanted to elevate that. If you could share with folks some of the work that we're doing around, because some of the pushback that we've also heard from residents is as we talk about, this culture change, as we talk about some of the changes that we're making, the bump outs, the timing of signals. I think some of this is also a culture change that we're investing in our young people, right?
Absolutely. We need to explain to people what we are doing and why. If there's no awareness of it, then it doesn't have the same effect as it would where people become aware of what's going on. And so we've done a lot of things to encourage education and awareness. We've partnered with Columbus City Schools. We had a school traffic safety week in October where every school was given the opportunity to look at some education pieces. They had a choice board for teachers. We had morning announcements every day on at all the schools, and we even had Dom Taberry come and spread Maria's message about distracted driving. So we plan that to be an annual thing. If we get children involved, when I was growing up, we were taught to wear our seatbelts, and then we told our parents to wear their seatbelts. And I think if we can encourage similar messages about driving safe speeds, look out for one another, even from a young age, that will permeate on up through the community. But that culture change, it starts with us. We all have a part. We can do this together if we think about one another, and that whoever is out there on the street could be your mom or your sister or your best friend, and we want to look out for them. And it's not just about how fast we get where we need to go, and having no consideration for one another. And that's going to take some time, and it even permeates with some of the culture on TV. And we have TV shows called The Fast and Furious, movies where their starring actor died in a traffic crash. How does that not permeate within society? So there's a recognition there. So I think all of these things marry together to have this influence and change in how we use our transportation system.
Thank you, Maria. And I want to also I want to acknowledge your passion and your advocacy around this work, because I know that you've definitely put your heart into this work, especially the culture and the education piece, and that shines through, especially with some of our advocates that are in the room that I know that you work closely with. And I just want to thank you, and the children will always save us. So we're going to move to the public testimony portion of the hearing this evening. So I believe we have 7 folks who are here for public testimony. So I'm going to ask our first speaker to come up, Chris Long. If you'll come over to the podium, and as you're coming up, for all of our speakers, you will have 3 minutes to speak. And if you could please state your name and any organizations that you represent here today.
Thank you. Good evening, Chair Barroso, de Padilla, and other honorable members who may be watching from the Public Service and Transportation Committee. My name is Chris Long, and I serve as the Acting County Administrator for the Franklin County Board of Commissioners. On behalf of Board President John O'Grady, Commissioner Kevin Boyce, and Commissioner Erica Crawley, thank you for bringing forward legislation to reduce the speed limit in downtown Columbus to 25 miles per hour, and for allowing me to provide testimony in support of this proposal. As you are aware, the Franklin County Government Center includes the Franklin County Common Pleas Courthouse, the Franklin County Municipal Court, the Juvenile Intervention Center, numerous county government offices, and several parking structures. Surrounding the government complex are some of the busiest intersections in downtown, including the Mountain High Street intersection and Fulton and High Street. On any given day, there are approximately 6,900 visitors coming to and from the government complex, both as pedestrians and as motorists. Some of these visitors are families with small children. Some are individuals with mobility issues, and some are experiencing the stress that may come with rushing to an appointment or navigating an unfamiliar area. There are also approximately 2,800 staff who work in the government complex and arrive using various modes of transportation themselves. Once the complex master plan is fully implemented, we expect about 3,400 staff and 9,000 daily visitors to the complex. Amidst the daily pulse of motorist and pedestrian traffic in and around the government complex, there are also several major road improvement projects happening in the near vicinity that are projected to last for the next several years. Suffice it to say, like most of downtown Columbus, it is a bustling and busy area, and we must do everything in our collective power to ensure our residents can safely enjoy and access it. In addition to concern for individuals visiting or working in the government complex, we share your concern for the safety of all those living and working and visiting downtown Columbus. We know that as the city grows in population, more drivers, pedestrians, and cyclists will use the streets, sidewalks, and bike lanes, and with that comes the increased risk of traffic-related injury and death. Studies show that the higher speeds result in greater incidents of injury and death, especially where vulnerable road users like pedestrians and cyclists are involved, and we know we have a growing presence of these multimodal travelers in downtown Columbus. Therefore, we support a speed limit reduction and the implementation of leading pedestrian interval timing to give pedestrians greater protection in some of the busiest intersections downtown as part of your Vision Zero Columbus Action Plan, and we urge consistent, safe, and equitable enforcement of these measures to ensure motorists slow down. We thank you for recognizing the intersections near our government complex and the modifications, that some of which have already been implemented, and we are committed to educating our staff and visitors on the importance of these and other safety measures. Further, we ask for your consideration of a traffic study focused on the government complex to assess the impact of the ODOT construction projects nearby, assess changing traffic patterns and backups, evaluate motorist and bus drop-off zones, and identify any additional measures that can be deployed to calm traffic and increase pedestrian safety in the area. And the commissioners would welcome discussions on how we can partner to do so. Thank you so much for allowing us to present this testimony, and thank you for your leadership on this issue.
Thank you. Thank you for being here. I do want to, our next speaker that we have on deck, Eli Bonhart, if you want to get ready. And after Eli, we have Mark Conti. One thing I forgot to mention at the beginning, I welcome folks to share your pronouns if you're comfortable doing so that I can properly address folks as you come up. But I do want to ask a question of public service. You mentioned a traffic study. Can you talk a little bit about traffic studies and how they work, just for folks who may be watching?
Sure. So traffic studies work a number of different ways. So actually in our downtown area, we've just recently kicked off earlier this month an effort to look at our downtown area through a multimodal lens. So we've kicked off our downtown multimodal transportation study. So that's certainly going to look at our streets in the downtown area, how we can better accommodate bicyclists, pedestrians, as well as transit, and how does everything play nicely together in the same sandbox. So that's an effort that we just embarked on. As far as around the complex itself, we'd be more than happy to have further conversation and discussions on a lot of the concerns and things that you mentioned, bus stops and everything else. So a lot of that stuff we will be looking at as part of our study, but we'd be happy to have further conversations to figure out more details to figure out how we can get the best solution at the end.
Thank you. And Chair, I do want to acknowledge the partnership and support and strategies that the county and the city have been having over the last couple of months to address very real concerns, and we appreciate the ongoing dialogue as we continue forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Chair Barroso de Padilla. I'm Eli Bonert. I use he, him pronouns. First, I want to thank you for the opportunity to speak this evening and would like to thank you for holding this important hearing. We know that safe speeds when driving are vital to protecting all on or near a roadway. In areas like downtown, where there are consistently large numbers of people using alternative modes of transportation, the speed of cars around them becomes even more important to be aware of. Across the country, over 10,000 people lose their life every year because of a speed-related car crash. Creating safe speed limits is beneficial for all people, no matter if they're in a car, walking across the street to grab lunch, or cycling to work. Part of the Vision Zero approach that has been adopted in cities and states across the nation is finding safe solutions to reduce speeds. A reduction in the speed limit downtown to 25 miles an hour is an important step to take towards achieving that goal. We know that at 40 miles per hour, 46% of pedestrians that are hit will die. At 30 miles an hour, 20% will die. At 20 miles an hour, only 8% will die if a car hits them. At our current speed limit in the majority of downtown, 35 miles an hour, most folks are likely already driving over the posted speed limit, as 62% of Columbus residents admitting to do so in the Columbus Vision Zero action plan. By reducing the speed limit downtown, we would see a reduction in speed-related deaths, as well as creating a safer place to walk to the park, bike to the store, and drive home from work. This change would be a win for everyone that works, plays, and lives downtown, as they will have a safer environment to enjoy. While reducing speed is a vital component of a safer downtown, we cannot stop just there. A major factor in the speed people feel comfortable driving is the street design itself. Just out the doors of this building on Broad Street, it's 8 lanes wide. It often feels more like an interstate highway than it does a downtown city street. One of the most important principles in speed control is that drivers tend to drive at the speed at which they feel safe and comfortable. With a road that's 8 lanes wide, it's no shock that people feel comfortable driving at unsafe speeds downtown. We can counter this issue by reducing lane width, employing curb extensions at crosswalks, using pinch points to slow down drivers, adding raised crosswalks, reducing the number of lanes on roads, and banning right on red turns. I ask that the reduction of the speed limit downtown is only the beginning of this discussion, and that we will promptly follow this change with the other necessary components to create a safe downtown for all to enjoy.
Thank you, Mr. Bonner. Ronaldo, you know I'm looking at you. Okay. Do you want to talk a little bit about some of the some of the highlights that Mr. Bonner talked about in terms of, especially as we think about the other improvements that we might want to make downtown?
Yeah, we absolutely agree that just adjusting the speed limit alone is not the only answer. It's a part of the puzzle. It's an initial part of the puzzle, but there is more work to be done. So the downtown multimodal study that I referenced before, it's going to look at different options for different modes of transportation on various streets downtown. So a street like Broad Street that is currently 8 lanes wide, is it something that at the conclusion of the study, we have dedicated bus lanes with some form of a shared use path or a cycle track that's accommodating all roadway users? That would not only accommodate all roadway users, but it will also accomplish some of the things mentioned in the testimony, such as reducing the number of lanes, making them smaller. Again, we just kicked off that study process, and we absolutely are going to look at measures like that to affect the safety of the streets in downtown.
Thank you. Mark Conti, come on down. And then after Mark, we have Mindy Justice.
Good evening, Councilmember Barroso de Padilla. Thank you for the opportunity to testify. My name is Mark Conti, he, him pronouns. I'm Executive Director of the Capital Crossroads and Discovery Special Improvement Districts. The districts are associations of 750 property owners within downtown that are helping make downtown Columbus a vibrant and thriving neighborhood for all to live, work, study, and play. Lowering the speed limit downtown is really paramount to making this neighborhood vibrant and thriving for all. It will make it safer for pedestrians and drivers alike. What's weird about downtown is everyone who comes downtown is a pedestrian. Regardless of how you get here, you inevitably reach your last destination on foot. And this is what makes a safe speed limit so important to the area. This lower speed limit will save lives. With this change, a person is 1/3 less likely to be killed or severely injured by a car. On the flip side, a driver can expect only a 60-second increase in the amount of time it would take to drive the length of downtown with this reduction. Only 60 seconds. And that small of a delay is worth the safety benefits to everyone in our community. In addition, I applaud the city for the proposal to implement a leading pedestrian interval at 7 intersections. This will make pedestrians more visible to vehicles and reinforce a pedestrian's right-of-way in the crosswalk. As I'm sure many people will mention this evening, and we've already heard, reducing the speed limit, it's a great start, but it's just the beginning. The downtown streets are very wide, which encourages speeding. Other traffic calming measures like street trees and medians are going to be necessary, and I plan to continue to work, and our districts will continue to work with the staff of Public Service and Vision Zero to identify additional street improvements. Thank you for the opportunity to testify.
Absolutely, thank you, and thank you for, I'm excited, we've referenced a little bit the downtown plan. We're also talking about an art plan for the city of Columbus, and it's interesting because clearly downtown is where people live and they see it as their neighborhood, but I really see it as the heart of the city, right? It's where people come for shows, it's where people come for art, for theater, for all of our great festivals, the amazing festival season that we have throughout the year, and so really is like the people's community and the people's neighborhood, and so I appreciate you elevating that and appreciate the work that you do to pour into the people's neighborhood, so
Hear, hear to your comments, thank you.
Great, so next up, Mindy Justice. And then after Mindy, we have Ginger Torres.
Hello, hello. Councilmember Barroso de Padilla, city staff, thank you for the time, the honor to talk. Today, I am representing the Downtown Residents Association of Columbus, also known as DRAC, where I am the advocacy chair on that board. We are a civic association at the end of the day, comprised of downtown residents as well as urban partners who want to see a healthy, vibrant downtown neighborhood. I don't think what I'm going to say is going to be surprising. Downtown residents fully support the effort to reduce the downtown streets to 25 miles per hour. After all, we live here. Our families live here. Our children live here. Our fur babies live here. You mentioned it previously. Our significant others. We are a little different from suburban neighborhoods, but what we have really in common at the end of the day is wanting a safe place where crash-related deaths and serious injuries on our streets just don't happen at all. What makes us unique here, and I think you gave me a great little intro there, is that we are different in the fact that we expect the sounds of bustling activity. We know and enjoy and invite that living amongst the backdrop of where on any given day we have tourists visiting, business travelers popping in and out, and performances. We have folks voicing their activating their voices with local and state governments. So as residents, we want exactly that. We want others to love our backyard as much as we do. And that's exactly why this effort is critical. Reducing car crashes, frankly, is overdue. This effort started about 2 years ago, and of all the places where it should be a no-brainer, it's in the middle of a growing urban core. I'll take a moment just to admit that, yes, this means it will take people driving a car longer to get through, but let's be clear on longer. It'll take, as Mark noted, about a minute more to save a number of lives. Looking at it mathematically, I mean, a 10-mile-per-hour reduction is just not significant enough to make a considerable dent in anybody's drive time. In closing, DRAC supports the proposed legislation and welcomes additional changes in line with Vision Zero. Reducing car travel speeds is the right first step, but I lean on urbanist Walker Evans. He recently noted in his opinion piece that it's only the first step and we can't stop there. We absolutely can't stop there. We need to convert one-way to two-way. We could probably stand to get rid of our pedestrian beg buttons. We could probably narrow our lanes, as folks have mentioned. There's more infill development, adding medians. All of these things have been discussed. A lot of this is in motion, but it took us a long time to get here, and we know it takes us a long time to get to the next steps. So it's important to note that downtown residents are watching and waiting and hoping to see those things happen. So I hate to say this, but as for the sake of the future of downtown, it's time to put our proverbial foot on the gas and get a bunch of these things done. Thanks.
Thank you so much for your advocacy. Thank you for being here this evening. I do want to turn it over for just a second. We had talked about this before, Maria, about the first phase of Vision Zero. Can you give us just a little insight into what the second phase of Vision Zero looks like? And then, I don't know if Ronaldo, you want to jump in as well.
Perfect. Yes, thank you. We have been in the throes of Vision Zero 1.0. That was a 2-year plan that launched in the middle of COVID. And so we kind of started it and we wanted to see where we got in 2 years, what was working well, what lessons we would learn, and what we want to do more of. And so that plan is coming to a close at the end of March, and this strategy to reduce downtown speed limits was in that plan. And so we are working with our executive team of agency leaders like yourself, and we have our partner agencies with police and fire and the Department of Neighborhoods and our Health Commission to see what is the next set of strategies that we're going to do to continue what we are doing. This is absolutely just the start. So there is more that will be done. I anticipate more changes to narrow the streets and, even we talked about one-way to two-way conversions, I think Front and Marconi, we can mention that, that's coming. So be excited that this is the beginning and definitely more is coming with the second version of our action plan that will be a 5-year plan, and we plan to have that fully developed at the end of spring.
Yeah, you pretty much nailed everything. But yeah, Front Marconi, that is a project that's currently in design, and the remaining portions of Front Street that are not yet two-way will be converted to two-way, looking to bring that into construction later this year, as well as Marconi. So that will have a safety effect, make it easier for people to navigate downtown, and just an example of some of the things we're looking to do moving forward in the area.
And I just want to highlight and emphasize again, I think that this has been part of the conversation all evening, but we're not just retrofitting what's already been done, but this philosophy and these strategies are being put into what we're doing, right? How we're changing streets in, new developments that are coming. We included that in some of our zoning practices. We're under sidewalks, so now if you have a development, you're putting in a sidewalk. We're putting in ADA ramps in places where we may not have sidewalks because we know sidewalks are coming. So some of this is playing catch up, but some of this is also just written into the philosophy of how we're working, correct?
Absolutely. So one of the elements of Action Plan 1.0 was to update some of our design guidance for roadway design. So embracing things like more narrow travel lanes, methods and ways to look at adding additional crosswalks, more thought about where do we put bike lanes, trying to look for opportunities for protected bike lanes. Those things have been published. They were just published earlier this month. So it'll take a while for them to come into practice. However, when we're looking and envisioning our future projects, that's the foundation that we'll look at when things are designed moving forward.
Thank you, Ms. Justice. And as Ginger Tornes makes her way up, I just want to also emphasize, while we're talking about downtown today, all of the strategies are citywide in every neighborhood, in every corner of Columbus. After Ginger Tornes, we will have Jillian Dyer.
Good evening, Councilwoman Barroso de Padilla and Maria and everyone here. Thank you for all being here. This is one of the most worthy projects there are. Saving lives is what we're really talking about. So if you'd bear with me, I'm going to read my somewhat lengthy letter, but I'll try to read it as quickly as possible so I don't bore you to death. But anyway, what I'd first like to do is thank you all, since I haven't done this yet. Thank you, Maria, and thank you, Councilwoman De Padilla, for attending our World Day of Remembrance event in November. For those of you who are not familiar with World Day of Remembrance, it's an annual event that honors victims of traffic crashes and calls for actions to reduce future traffic crashes, like this reduction, the speed limit reduction, the Vision Zero action plan is proposing. So thank you for that. And I would also like to invite everybody to our fourth annual World Day of Remembrance, which is going to be the exact same place, and we would love you all to come and speak. The third Sunday in November in 2023 at Washington Gladden Park. And we'll send you all an invitation. But anyway, as you all know, for too long, we have prioritized moving cars at high speeds over the safety of everyone, and society at large is paying the price, with endless stories of lives ruined and or never fully realized because of death, injuries, and lifelong disabilities. This loss and suffering is preventable. The National Safety Council estimates the annual cost of traffic crashes to society at $887 billion in 2021, which equates to $2.6 billion annual cost to the city of Columbus. We cannot afford, nor should we accept, traffic fatalities and serious injuries as the inevitable cost of driving. Slowing traffic speeds is crucial in achieving our shared goal of zero traffic fatalities and serious injuries. Therefore, I support Vision Zero's action plan to reduce downtown Columbus's speed limit to 25 miles an hour. However, for the speed limit reduction to be truly effective, it is crucial to incorporate the safe systems geometric changes in street design, preferably beginning with the high injury network arterials. And I have a printout from, I'm going to give it to you all, from the Johns Hopkins Center for Injury Research and Policy and the Institute of Transportation Engineers. Their recommendations of the Safe Systems Consortium for Traffic Crash Reduction include road diets, which cut crashes up to 47%. They reduce the travel lanes and or the number of lanes, which with the additional space being designated for transit, parking, protected bike lanes, and landscaping. And they also reduce overall maintenance costs, especially when they reduce the travel lanes. And then medians is number 2. Raised medians and pedestrian refuge islands allow pedestrians to cross one direction of traffic at a time, which is crucial. Safety can be improved without substantially increasing delay, including of emergency vehicles. And they can reduce high energy head-on crashes by 97%. Raised crosswalks and or intersections provide separation between modes, increase visibility, and calm traffic. Also, bump outs at crossings where there are no raised crosswalks or intersections help increase visibility of pedestrians and those trying to cross. Modern roundabouts with vertical landscaping elements reduce vehicle speeds to 15 to 20 miles an hour at conflict points. Roundabouts slow traffic through dangerous intersections and prevent deadly side impacts, reducing severe crashes by 78 to 82%. Sorry about that. Pedestrian hybrid beacons, also known as hawk signals, increase driver awareness of pedestrians crossing mid-block or at unsignalized intersections, overcoming driver inattentiveness or distraction, and reducing pedestrian crashes by 55%. So here we have a whole host of tools that we can use, thank God. And the good thing is that we were fortunate that the bipartisan infrastructure law that was recently passed in Congress established the new Safe Streets and Roads for All program, and that offers additional funding for these projects. I don't have a crystal ball, but I believe Columbus is deserving and worthy of these funds. So I hope that will, can help make these projects happen.
Sure. Ginger, I know you are very passionate about this issue. I want to make sure that I think Maria wants to acknowledge something that you just brought up, and I want to give her a moment to do that. And then I want to ensure we have 2 more speakers, so I want to make sure that we give them the time as well. So, Maria, did you want to?
I'm super
don't come
excited,
anywhere.
Ginger, and everyone, to announce that we found out today that we won $12 million in the Safe Streets for All funding for Columbus on Livingston Avenue to do the road diet change to make the accommodations for vulnerable road users. Ohio received about $15 million. Most of it was in developing a Vision Zero style plan. We already have a plan, so we got $12 million. Super excited, just found out this afternoon. So a lot of those tools you talked about, we are already implementing in a lot of places throughout Columbus, and we plan to do more of.
Thank you for waving your magic wand.
Ginger, thank you for your advocacy. Thank you for all that you do in the beautiful day of remembrance and what it meant to those families. Absolutely, thank you. So Jillian, come on down. I also wanted to, as Jillian's coming up to the podium, we've referenced this a couple different times. I just want to ensure that folks understand. When we talk about a high injury network, can you all just explain what that means?
Absolutely. The High Injury Network, you can find it on our website at columbus.gov/Vision Zero. We have a map on there that shows where basically 65% of our worst crashes are happening on 10% of our Columbus streets. So these are our fatal crashes, our serious injury crashes, and all of our vulnerable road user crashes factor into this. And it's no surprise that they are largely those arterial streets with a lot of lanes where we have a lot of high speeds.
Perfect, thank you. Jillian, the floor is yours.
My name is Jillian Dyer, she, her. And I live in the campus area and I bike through downtown fairly frequently. So I want to say that lowering the speed limit downtown to 25 is a very good start, but it's just a start, and it cannot stop there. I was also hit in October of 2021, and I was hit on Treyview at 45 miles per hour on my bike and came to in the hospital to be told I was...
Turn and show it this way just because the camera's this way, and then
Yeah.
folks here can see it and folks online can see it as well. Thanks.
Yeah, so I woke up to find out that I had 6 fractured vertebrae, a broken pelvis, and what they didn't know is I had a TBI that has messed up my sense of smell and made it difficult to focus. And it was pretty awful. I got pretty lucky that I was hit at 45. But my main concern is that even if we lower the speed limit to 25 in the downtown area, and when we expand it, hopefully to the campus and Clintonville areas too, people can still go 45, 35, 45. They do it on Summit already. I see people driving their cars into people's porches. I see people hitting parked cars onto the sidewalk. I've seen cars flipped over into my neighbors' yards on Summit and 4th. And I think about that every single time I walk my dog or every single time one of my friends is out riding their bikes. I am constantly afraid I'm going to get a phone call that somebody that I care about has died in a car accident or been hit on their bike. So I am happy that there seems to be a lot of support for this. And the speaker before me said that we do have to do more. We have to have things that will stop people from going faster. We have to have roundabouts. We need protected lanes. We need protected sidewalks. We need sharper curbs. We need raised crosswalks. We need physical barriers. The other reason for that is that I don't want more police in my neighborhood. I know City Council had a difficult time yesterday acknowledging that police were a traffic stop by police was the reason that Tyree Nichols was killed. I don't want more of that in our neighborhood. I don't want police stopping people. I want people to not be able to go that fast. And if they do, I want concrete to stop them instead of having a human body or a pet's body or a child's body stopping that car. Another thing to consider in the future is that we are trying to get people to buy electric vehicles, which is another okay step. But the problem is electric vehicles are heavier than gas-powered cars. So even if you do lower the speed limit, they're still going to have more momentum than a gas-powered car would. So I don't know that it will, it might balance out, and they may cause just as much harm. We also are we're trying to grow the population of Columbus. If we add 20,000 new people to Columbus, just the downtown area, that's 17,800 cars if we follow the national trend of 890 cars per 1,000 people. If the central Ohio population grows by 800,000, we're going to see 712,000 more cars in Columbus. And we are cutting bus service. We don't have public transportation. We don't have protected bike lanes. We don't even really have protected places for pedestrians to go. And we live in a college town. I live in the campus area. People drive drunk constantly. They drive the wrong way down my street, which is pretty horrifying when I think about people's pets being outside, or we have kids in my neighborhood that play in the street. We have college students that walk in the street. And these college students are going to parties and then they're driving all over campus because they don't have any other options. I don't want to tell drunk people that they need to walk home alone at 2 in the morning. I want them to have a bus or a safe way to get home without putting other people in danger. I don't want more people to die. I don't want more people to have serious injuries. So I do believe that everybody here has good intentions, and that we do have the plans, but I would also like to note that where I was hit on Trabue, if we had followed Mayor Coleman's plan, we would have had a separate bike lane by 2018. So I shouldn't have been hit. I don't know what happened to that plan. It is still on the City of Columbus's website, but it never happened. So I'm hoping we take that $12 million and we spend it on action and not more studies. We know cars kill people. We know cars going fast kill more people. So we have to start putting something in place. Thank you.
So a couple things. So first of all, thank you so much for coming down and sharing your story. I think, again, I was hit by a car. It is not fun. It's scary to cross the street. It's even 20-some years later. So thank you for sharing your story, and thank you for your advocacy. I would also welcome you to meet with my office at any time, because there was a myriad of things that you kind of brought up that I want to ensure that we address and that we continue to have conversations about. I also want to hand it over to Public Service, because I know that we have a bike plan that we have updated for also changing factors, right? So I want to hand over to Public Service, and then there's something else that I wanted to address real quick.
Sure. So as far as our existing bikeway plan, it was created approximately 15 years ago. So a lot of things have changed in that amount of time. And we recognize the need, not only with the changing demographics of the city, changing development patterns, changing traffic patterns. That plan really needs to get updated. So we are starting the process of that update. So we will be getting some additional assistance to start really diving in and looking at that plan. Where do we need to update it, but trying to incorporate more things that people are asking for, like protected bike lanes. Not just separated shared use path, but the opportunity of actual, protected bike lanes to encourage more biking, provide more options. A lot of things will be taken into account. Some of those development patterns. Trabue Road is actually a road that, with some of the recent developments that have come through council, whether it be the opening of the new Quarry Metro Park on the east end of the corridor, whether where it turns to Renner, it's the, Sugar Farms housing development at the west end. We're trying to look at that corridor as a whole. And we have been working with those developers. And one key strategy is to get separated infrastructure. We partnered, I believe it was with Franklin County Engineer's Office, to get shared use path on the south side of that bridge when it was reconstructed. And we're looking at other bridges as well. I believe we're talking about the bridge that goes over 270, trying to get, shared use path there as well. And so as more developments come in, partnering with them, requiring them to build the proper pedestrian facilities moving forward. But Trabue has been a road that we are focused on getting more improvements, because increased activity and change and needed and necessary changes that need to happen on the roadway to support it.
Yeah, thank you.
And I just wanted to say, I know we did a big table with other cyclists and folks in the cyclist community. And so, again, I mean, I know that we have a ways to go, right, with everything that we're doing. And it takes a while for us to get there. That's a dissatisfying answer, but we are working on it. And the continued advocacy of folks in coming into council and having conversations with us is great. I also just want to mention one other thing because we're here. There's always a time and a place for us to talk about issues. I don't think there's anybody on city council that would not say that Tyree Nichols was killed by police. We all saw what we saw with our eyes. Was that the venue to have the conversation? I would say not. But we welcome conversations like those, and no one on this council is afraid to have those tough conversations. So I just wanted to acknowledge that. And
I was
again,
referencing last night's meeting.
yeah, I know exactly what you're referencing, and thank you. Thank you again for your advocacy, and thank you for being here tonight.
Yeah, and just one last thing to point out. I know it does take time, but at the very beginning of COVID, I know we saw a lot of cities just throw bike infrastructure and pedestrian infrastructure up. So it is possible. We can put temporary things that can help people who maybe aren't as supportive realize that it's actually going to make things better for everybody. So I hope we look at different ways to move more quickly.
Yes, in our office, we've been working with public service. We've set aside significant dollars towards tactical urbanism, which is essentially exactly what you're talking about. What are those short-term solutions to longer-term problems or to issues that we're seeing now as we work towards the longer-term solutions? So again, would love to have a dialogue and talk about how we do that together.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next up, I would like to, we actually flipped the order. We have two other speakers. So Matt McPeck, I welcome you to come up. After Matt McPeck would be Leah Griffin, and then we're ending with Joyce Patton. And if I said anyone's name incorrectly, I apologize.
Hello. Thank you, Councilmember Padilla, for this meeting, and thank you for Vision Zero. Him, Matt McPeck. I welcome this project, wanted to happen, reducing speed to 25. I live at 3rd and Long, and our building has been hit 3 times by crashes, another car into the building. That could be 3 lives or more lost because of that incident. We need to protect and keep our residents healthy, safe, workers safe, and all the tourists safe coming into the city, enjoying the festivals, enjoying everything that downtown has to offer. Thank you.
Thank you so much for coming down. Leah?
Hello, my name's Leah Griffin, and thank you for letting me testify. Like the last person who testified, I live very close to him. I live on the corner of 4th and Gay, and I've heard probably a couple of the explosion sounds of the car crashes that run into his building. I had my own experience when a small car sped through a red light on Gay and was hit directly by a Mercedes SUV, which plowed into my condo, and my porch was just demolished. And because it was 2019 in December, it took forever to fix because COVID was there and there was no way to get the workers or the supplies to fix it. A block the other way is Broad and 4th. There's a building that I passed that has been hit countless times. They just have to keep replacing the window, and I always feel sorry for the office worker that has that office and just wonder, what would you do? You always are at risk of just some car plowing into you. Also, like one of the previous witnesses, I believe reducing the speed limit is only one factor. You have to enforce it, because on my street on 4th, the speed limit's 35 miles per hour. Nobody drives that. They always drive. I mean, a lot of people don't drive it. And we also have problems in the summer with like drag races and motorcycle races. And so if you don't have the enforcement, if you don't have resources like police officers that will give traffic tickets and enforce the law, then I'm all in support of like restructuring the roads. I think that's one of the curbs, and timing of the lights, that would really help. I've noticed when I turn left on Mound Street, it's much easier now. Now I understand why. So that's, I could see that it really works. That's all I have to say. But thank you.
That is, first of all, I'm so sorry about your porch, and that is super scary.
Yeah, it's just property, but it happens a lot.
Yeah.
I mean, it happens, it's worth fixing.
No, absolutely. I grew up on a street that was between two main and Broad Street arterial roads that people would just speed down, and often you would find a car in your driveway or
Yes.
in your lawn, and it is scary. And so I'm glad to see that you're starting to see some of the changes on Mound Street. I mean, again, I think that these strategies work. We know that they work. We've seen best practices in other cities, and so we'll start to see them come more. And we are always, this is a challenge with change, right? We are impatient for that change, especially when safety is a concern for all of us. And we're starting to see those strategies, and they are coming. So thank you for being here today. Thank you for testifying. Thank you for sharing your story. Mr. McPeck, thank you also for sharing your story. I didn't acknowledge that that's also scary for your building. And my hope is that we'll start to see that again downtown, and folks will begin to see it here in the People's Neighborhood, and then we'll see it in these other places that we're making these big, significant changes. So thank you. So to close us out this evening, Joyce Patton, if you want to come on down.
Good evening, Councilmember. Thank you for the opportunity to speak on this really important legislation. Unfortunately, I, like you and Julian, know firsthand the long-term ramifications of being struck by a vehicle. On the evening of April 25th, 2022, I was legally crossing High Street at the intersection of Mound when I was hit by an SUV. As the result of my injuries, I spent 6 days in Grant Hospital, 5 weeks in rehabilitation facilities, and an additional 3 weeks with family when I was no longer confined, waiting until I was no longer confined to a wheelchair. I continue to receive therapy as I'm not yet fully recovered, physically, mentally, clearly emotionally, from the trauma of this incident. I still can't cross a downtown intersection, and rarely do elsewhere. I'm lucky that the driver who hit me was stopped at that same light and was only going 20 miles an hour. Otherwise, my injuries could have been far worse or even fatal. I'm not here to seek sympathy, but to illustrate the negative impact these type of crashes have on the victims and how they can be prevented. I applaud the work of Mayor Ginther's administration on Vision Zero and City Council for enacting the recommendations of lowering the speed limit to 25 miles and adjusting crosswalks to leading pedestrian interval signals. I believe both will help make Columbus City streets safer for pedestrians and drivers. It's common sense and scientific fact, as has been pointed out often this evening, that lower speeds are safer. They result in fewer injuries to vulnerable users and less damage to vehicles. However, it is incumbent upon all of us who drive on city streets to obey the speed limit. Be aware of your surroundings. Watch for pedestrians and bicyclists, and please pay attention and slow down. Councilmember, thank you again for this opportunity and for your important work on this issue.
Thank you, Ms. Patton, for being here today. Thank you for sharing your story. I want to thank all of the folks, the 62 folks who sent in written testimony. I want to thank the folks who joined us here in council chambers this evening. These stories are heavy, and it's, I think every morning you wake up and you have a plan, and I think that God and the universe also has a plan, right? And things happen. And I think that especially when we talk again about the safety of our people, we've talked about safety in many forms this evening. And I think that this is one way for us to address it. This is just one small slice of a very large pie. And I think that for every time that we make change, we have to celebrate that change, but it is always before the people that change happens. And it is the advocacy of all of our residents who showed up tonight, who took the time to send in written testimony, for all of the advocates who continue to do this work year-round, for the folks who put on days of remembrance, for the folks who continue to elevate these issues in every street, in every neighborhood, in every community of Columbus. That's how we will make change happen. So I want to thank you all for being here. Our hope is that we can very quickly pass this legislation. Again, we've heard of support, resounding support from the community. We have a path forward. Our hope is that once we pass this in early February, very soon we will see the changes around March. Is that correct?
Correct. Once the legislation is passed, our internal crews will begin the process of fabricating and installing the signs. So a lot of the work will be done throughout the remainder of February and into March.
And that's, again, just this piece of downtown legislation that we're talking about today, but we will have continued education around Vision Zero. Again, I cannot implore people enough that the tools are only as good as we use them. They're only as good as we use them. And being a good neighbor, being a good human, is that you are watching out for vulnerable road users. Those are people on 2 feet. Those are people on a cycle that are just wanting to get home, just wanting to do the thing that they set out to do that day. And when we are behind a vehicle, we have an incredible responsibility to ourselves, to our family, and to our community to be safe, to be intentional, and to pay attention. So again, I want to thank everyone for being here, our partners in public service for the work that you do every day. Again, our folks at CTV, again, my staff, Amaris Lemus and Jessica Casares, for all the work that they put in. I encourage folks, if you have other concerns, if there are other questions that you have after watching what I hope was a very informative public hearing today, that you reach out to my office. We would love to meet with you, to talk to you, to talk to any group that you represent. Thank you all, and have a good evening and be safe.